Thank you. Good evening. I will now call the January 28th meeting of the Ben Lapine School Board of Directors to order. I would like to introduce our participants this evening. Vice Chair Carrie McPherson Douglas. Is she via Zoom? Okay, she's absent. Okay, to my right, actually, Amy Tatum, Keena Chadwick, Ross. Where's Ross? Oh, there he is. Hold on. Cameron Fisher, Shirley Olson, also Superintendent Stephen Cook, Deputy Superintendent Dr. Lisa Burke, and Board Clerk Janet Bojanowski, and I'm Marcus LeGrand, Chair of the Board. All right, will you please stand, remove your hats, and join me in the pledges of allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, I would like to turn it over to Dr. Lisa Burke, but before we do that, I just want to put it on the record. Is like I want to just check in with everyone, all the board members, superintendent, board clerk, and Lisa as well. How's everybody checking in with all the news that we have coming out nationally, with the people in our community, feeling a little uneasy about what's going on? I just want to kind of check in with everyone to make sure everybody's good to go. If anybody had any comments or anything that's just weighing on you or your concerns, I think it'd be a great opportunity for if anyone wants to discuss that, because I really want to make sure everybody feels comfortable knowing, in the height of the situation that we're in right now. Right?
Yeah, and I want to say that I want every person out there listening, and there may be just 12 of you at home because this is not a meeting that I think a lot of people are attending, but for the 12 of you out home listening, I want to say that your identity is respected. Who you are is respected. This board and this district will continue to respect who you love, where you want to be, your, like I said, identities, nationalities, all of that. Just because we have a political party who is choosing to promote division, as an individual board member, I will not do that. I don't think anyone else on this board plans on doing that. At work, I have had people asking me to help erase their identities to try to protect themselves, and that is really sad and harmful. And I'm really sad that we're living in this day and age in this country, because this is not who we are as a people. I believe Americans are better than this.
Anyone else?
I just wanted to note that I did have an email from a friend today that reported, and I would consider her a reasonable report, if you will, that there were some unmarked cars at both Fred Meyer and Safeway on Highway 20 today. No indication that anything happened, but apparently there was no question of why they were there.
Thank you for sharing, Shirley. Anyone else? All right. Well, thank you for that. Like I said, I just want to give everybody some space and give it some time, because I know it does weigh, because we hear the news every day. We get the information every day. We get the text messages, the phone calls, the information that comes down. And I don't want us just to be reactive. I want us to be very critical, very calculated in what we do, and make sure that we continue to protect the rights and needs of all our different people who we work with every single day, and the students that we represent and the families that we represent as well. So just want to go ahead and go from there. Well, so now at this time, I will turn it over to Dr. Burke. Dr. Burke.
Thank you. I am sitting in a space today of facilitator for all of you. There have been a couple of different emails that have been passed in the past several months that really are around this idea that the board would like to sort of interrogate your practices a little bit, understand what your role is as board members, dive into just how the board is operating as a board, and how that sort of matches up with some kind of best practices type of language around boards around the country, and specifically Oregon. And so as we go through this process today, it will be a lot of reflection of how this board is working currently, as well as likely reflection on things that you feel as a board member that you wish you knew more about or had more depth in or whatever. And so as I sit in this facilitation role, please know that as we close out this session today, I am in full support. I don't have any sort of dog in the fight, so to speak, of the way in which we engage in conversations like this. So I welcome feedback about the process. I welcome feedback about where we go from here and what sort of professional development opportunities or times to reflect and engage this board is most interested in moving forward. So I'll draw your attention to a couple of different documents that we'll use today. And we'll start with this very first packet. It is a 9-page packet. You're just going to take it with you today. But you all are going to engage in one page of this packet. And this packet is a sort of a stance paper on professional development for school boards. So really the idea of why should boards engage in understanding the work of boards and what makes that process good or not so good. And really, this position paper is some of the documentation that Oregon School Boards has on their website and that they direct school boards to. So the way that we will engage in this today is that I'm going to give each of you just one page, and we're going to do a protocol called a word, a phrase, a sentence. And so you're going to have one page to really kind of look over. And what I'd like you to highlight on your corresponding page is a word, a phrase, or a sentence that you feel like really stands out to you on that page. That's something that resonates with you that you want to continue to think about. So Cameron, I'm going to ask that you do that in looking over page 1. Marcus, you'll do page 2. Amy, page 3. Ross, page 4. Shirley, page 5. And Keena, you have the sort of graphic of 6, 7, and a couple paragraphs on 8. So yours is a little bit of an unusual one. Okay, so well, there we go. So we will take we'll check in about like 6-ish minutes. You'll just, again, either recognize a word, a phrase, or a sentence. And I'll know you're ready when your pen is down.
Can I ask a quick question for
Yes.
clarity? When you were talking about requests for this kind of material, did you say you were getting emails from community members about this?
No, this is from the board. So Marcus had put out some information about a board. Shirley had asked for how this relates to Oregon School Boards Association. That's not the first time that we've had different things come up about that. And then within board leadership, we talked about, okay, during this work session, would we facilitate something like this? So that's what lands us here today.
Got it, thank you.
Yeah. right, 20 seconds to finish your thought. Okay, so we will start with a word. If anybody had a word that stood out that you'd like to share, go ahead and share it with the group.
All right, I'll go first. Or you want to go, Cam? I know you got first page. You want to go first? Okay. All right, one word or many words or phrase?
Right now, we're going to start with word. So if you had one word.
I think the one word that throughout this whole thing that I read, I think students' achievement, it was the key piece that kept coming up.
Thank you.
Student achievement. Put a hyphen in there.
I'm following the rules, and my one word is impactful.
Thanks, Amy. Thank you, Director Tatum. Any other words that stood out for folks? Okay, how about let's move to a phrase.
Collaborative governance.
Thank you.
Alignment of resources to district goals.
Holding the system accountable.
Effective working relationships.
I may have broken the rule on this one because mine's longer, but it's not a full sentence, so therefore it's a phrase. Data savviness, embracing and monitoring data even when the information is negative and using it to drive continuous improvement.
I think it's a full
All right.
sentence and a phrase.
It doesn't have a period, and there's lots of colons and semicolons and commas, therefore it's not a full sentence on its own.
Okay, then I'm going to jump in again. Deep reliance on data to inform decisions, learning and developing as a team.
Yeah, okay, so let's move on to sentences.
Okay, so my sentence was, knowing that student achievement increases when board members act collaboratively and that student achievement decreases when board members micromanage should give board members pause.
Thank you, Director Tomlin. Any other sentences?
Moreover, empirical evidence indicates that a more collaborative board governs a smoother functioning district, which is associated with higher student achievement. Lorenzen, I think, is that the book you just ordered? Okay.
Effective boards that lead high-performing districts do so through well-articulated high expectations for all students, a focus on student achievement, holding the system accountable while providing sufficient support for district goals and initiatives, hiring a superintendent with superb leadership skills, and by creating space for their own professional learning and development.
I'll continue with this theme. The research shows us that the vast majority of school boards in low-performing school systems spend little time on instructional issues or plans for relevant academic district improvement.
All right, in my sentence, the one that I like the most, well, most relevant, a collaborative relationship with staff and the community, and establishing strong communication structures to inform and engage both internal and external stakeholders in setting and achieving district's goals.
Thank you. All right, anything else that we want to surface as really pivotal, seminal words or sentences for this work?
I can think another word that came for me, just the word is evaluating.
Thank you.
So
yep, go
Lisa,
ahead.
the question I had was about equity lens, because it talks about assessment literacy and data analysis through an equity lens. So does the district have an equity lens
Oh,
process?
Ross, what an excellent segue, my friend. Okay, so I'm going to draw your attention to a couple of other documents that are important for our work, both today and just generally in Ben Lupine. So the first is right behind the article that you just read, and it is our board ends. So this outlines our 4 main areas of organizational goals. Some of you were directly part of this work, some of you are new to this work, but these are the areas that matter to us in Ben Lapine. So strong academic foundation, strong academic core, passion, purpose, and plan, wellness, inclusion, and belonging, and operational systems that support an academically effective, sustainable organization. So these are our 4 areas in which we engage when we're talking as a school board, when we're talking as teachers in classrooms, et cetera. The next page is our strategic initiatives. So once we have board goals, or organizational goals rather, we have kind of a plan of attack, or the things that we choose to highlight and focus on that allow us to meet those outcomes that are expected of our board. So on this first page, you'll see the numbers 1, 2, and 3 down the left side. Those represent our first 3 organizational goals: strong academic core, passion, purpose, plan, and wellness, inclusion, and belonging. And within that, you notice there are either 3 or 2 main areas of initiative work that we have going on in order to support each of those areas. On the back page, you'll notice that this is all related to organizational goal 4. And so this highlights all of our support systems, our support groups, our facilities work, our tech work, our financial work, all of the systems that allow us to kind of produce a system that is academically effective and creates great experiences for our students. So this is a little bit of our plan of attack. We started with, what do we care about? Then there's a plan of attack. And then to Ross's question, there's a pamphlet that's in the middle of your table, so in between the 2 board members. And this is the work of our equity stance. So for Ben Lapine Schools, we do have an equity stance. And this is work that came out of some community work that we did a few years ago, and it continues to be work that we anchor in every day. So when we talk about the things that we care about in our organizational goals, we are also focusing on them through the recognition that honoring diversity is important. Examining our systems is important. Amplifying voices, delivering outcomes, acknowledging impact, and affirming inclusion. Those are all important pieces of our equity stance. So this is a tool that actually regionally and across our state, school districts have looked to us to kind of recognize, wow, that's some good work that allows you to make good decisions moving forward for students. Not certain students, but for all students. And that really matters as we think about our organizational goals and what we care to do in terms of our tasks and the things that we choose to spend our money and our time on to have great outcomes for students. So those 3 things I just wanted you to have in front of you as you start to engage in the work of reflection on how this board works and how you work and understand yourself and your role as a board member. So I'm going to draw your attention to the next document, which is something we're going to engage in for probably the next 20-ish minutes. So there are a number of different board kind of rubrics or board ways in which boards can evaluate themselves. And this is from the National School Boards Association work. So there are 12 areas that are outlined in here. There are some groups that will highlight 8 areas. Some groups highlight 10 areas, but the moral of the story is they all kind of come back to these large areas. So today, what we're going to spend time doing for the next, like I said, about 20 minutes, is each of you are going to have a statement that's presented to you via a survey on your email that's already been sent to you. And you're going to take a look at that statement. So the very first one is the board collaborates with the community to articulate core values and beliefs for the school district. And you have 4 choices. You can say, that's strongly in place, that's sometimes in place, that's not in place, or I don't know. And the point of this is not to analyze each one super deeply and think about all of the situations that you've encountered. The point of this is to have a kind of a rapid recognition of sort of, this is where I think we are, because we're going to continue to unpack this for the next several months, I would imagine. So When I say go, you will start this survey and you can start to kind of put in your information. When you're done with this, we will use the answers that are collective to then make a little bit of an action plan, and we'll do that in some partnerships. So I'll walk you through that in just a bit. Again, don't lag and don't spend a lot of time analyzing, just make a choice and move on, okay? So you're gonna click on the survey and get going, go.
IT, do we have any mood music? I'm just kidding.
Steve will turn on some music on his phone.
This is my kids' morning music. This is lo-fi chill. You sure? Maybe we can start it. Yeah. Okay.
I'm sorry, I forgot the mic. Woo, hot mic. So you can take a look at your paper, make any scratches on it that you'd like, but you can think of that reflection as you as a board member, while the one that you did on the survey is our board as a whole. And if you're not quite done, just keep working on survey. Okay, so let's come back together. All of you have done this million marker journey in this survey. And I want to just take a moment and think about those broad categories. So on your paper, you have those broad 12 categories. Is there anyone that, as you were going through, you felt like, I'm pretty sure our board across the board would say that this is an area where we crush it. This is an area that's excellent. Like if you were to guess which was your top area as a board, what might you say?
You're looking for a response right now?
Yeah.
I felt like cultural responsiveness was one that really felt strongly about. Is that
Yeah.
one section? I don't actually remember.
Climate and culture is the section. Oh, no, you're right.
standard.
Cultural responsiveness
Yeah,
is right
I felt
before
like
that.
one first, but also culture and climate, relationships built on trust, et cetera. And then there was another that, community engagement, I felt was a strength as well.
Okay.
Is that what you're asking?
Yep.
Strengths, yeah.
Other ideas about our top ones as a board?
I agree with what Cameron said. I said I agree with what you said.
I think Standard 11, I have such a strong feeling about us as individual and collective board members that board member conduct, ethics, and relationship with the superintendent is a very strong area for us.
Agreed.
And just with my very limited experience with the board, I think it seems to be a strong area too. Yeah.
what might be an area that stands out as, wow, this is an area where we need to work on, or we haven't talked about much, or needs to improve?
Well, I'm going to point out accountability and using data, and I'm going to hold up our board ends, because this document is driving me bonkers. One of my biggest frustrations as a board member, and like, you know, when OSBA came and did our training after our retreat, quite frankly, I thought it was worthless. And one of the reasons I did not find it useful at all, probably because I'm more experienced and their training was really geared toward, I think, a brand new board member. So for someone who's been on a board for 6 years sitting there, I felt like I was learning nothing. But also, I feel like we have not really gotten into the Carver model, right? And a lot of these questions and some of these things don't seem necessarily relevant if we're practicing under a Carver model, but I also don't think our board is really practicing under a Carver model, even though we say we do. You know, the very article that we have posted that talks about policy governance, the one thing over and over it says is you must have ends that are measurable, and that is the obsessive goal of the board. I believe that is the exact quote. And if you look at our current ends, so we're measuring mastery of English, language arts, and math foundational knowledge and skills at the end of first grade as measured by standardized assessments. How is that measurable? It's not, right? So I've been waiting for our updated strategic plans from you, Dr. Cook, so that hopefully the board can look at these ends and make them measurable so that we actually have data that we can hold the district accountable for outcomes for our kids. And, you know, as a individual board member, I know there's lots of competing strategies, and, you know, the way I think about it is I want every student to feel challenged in our schools, and I really don't care how that happens, but I would really love to see us as a board adopt a measure of rigor as reported by students as a measure that we hold the district accountable for. A little bit of a soapbox, but I feel like we are not doing good when it comes to data and accountability. And how much of that is communication styles, the board not having necessarily all the access to data that we might need, getting things after the fact that sometimes I feel like we should have had ahead of time. I think there's a lot of room for improvement, quite frankly, there, you know, and it's bidirectional.
Other ideas about areas that stood out as places in which we can grow?
In terms of the improvement piece, I think for me it's more along with Amy. I agree with that part. Thank you for saying that part. I think the systems thinking is something we got to look at as well. How does these different policies shift to protect many of the board ends and stuff that we have too? I think that's something we're going to continue to keep working on and striving to be better. I think we do a decent job, but I think we can be better as a board to make sure the system thinking is in place to be able to protect many of the things that we're trying to do structurally. So I think that's the second thing. I think we're like I said, we're decent at it, but we need to be better. Yeah.
Any other comments?
I just know that for many of the boards I've been part of, budgeting has always been an issue with board members understanding the budget process and how it works. And I don't know if you all feel like you have a good handle on it or not here, but it's always been an issue with most boards I've worked with. So.
One of my questions for you, Ross, would be, because something I always feel like when we look at our budget here is we have so little control over it as board members, right? Because 85% of our budget is people, and that's really not anything we can negotiate on. And so I kind of feel like our budgeting process is in some ways a formality because there's only so much that's really flexible within it. But I don't disagree with you. But it took me years on the board to realize, like, yeah, we actually can't do much to change this document, nor do I feel like we should, right? We want to make sure it's reflective of our priorities, but the work that goes into it, you know, is not necessarily board work. And I don't know how that dovetails with experiences you've had on boards in the past, if you've had more flexibility, you know, because, you know, for example, like Deschutes County, they sit down with their budget committee and they go through line by line and spend days going through the budget. It's like a 3-4 day budgeting process. I don't want to do that as a board member on the school district, nor do I think that would be a good use of any of our times.
No, I agree, yeah. No, I think from the board's perspective, most of the information I was most interested in getting is that they understand how money flows in and out, and that we're managing the money correctly, and that, you know, we've got solid reserves, and, you know, those kind of things, not how you're spending the money, because you're right, most of it is spent on people.
No, I want to talk.
If we have two on at
Push your
once, it
button.
echoes.
I'm sorry. We've made a severe, excuse me, not severe, a concerted effort on community engagement. I don't think we're there yet as a board. Individually, we do different things, but we've talked about some other kinds of strategies. And Steve's initiated several, but I still think needs to be more of a concerted effort for two-way conversation with elements of the community that I don't think we're touching.
Any particular areas, Shirley? I mean, that come to mind that you care to share?
I think we talk about it a lot, but I don't know that we do it a lot. I know you visit schools all the time, and so does Keena. I visit mostly just the South County schools. But I don't really talk to the parents in those communities very much. Once in a while at an activity, I get an opportunity to. Somebody quoted a number of nonprofit agencies in the Bend area. It's hundreds, right? Yeah, it's amazing. Well, somehow, I don't know how you connect with all of those, but I'm sure there are some that we probably should connect with, whether it's an individual just representation of the board, if you will, just a liaison, or a significant invite folks in. That's not always, it doesn't always work. La Pine Middle School has had 3 meetings of their parents, community. The last one, 2 people showed up. And I mean, they did a good job of advertising it. They provide dinner. They had the kids do something. I mean, they've done all the tricks that we all know. And it's still just really, really hard to get those parents involved. So I don't know what the answer is, but there's a couple of examples.
All right, so I want to draw your attention to what we have just come up with, which is our areas that stand out rated by y'all as our lowest areas, or areas where we have the most opportunity to grow. So budget and financial accountability, and using data, those stand out as the areas that we could grow in most. These areas stood out as the areas that were strong for us. So the feeling of conduct, ethics, relationship, community engagement, and cultural responsiveness. So as I hear some of the comments that you're making, I think that this is maybe perhaps a desired piece that is talked about frequently, and maybe there's a middle ground in there to work as an improvement space. But that stands out as just hearing what you all sort of felt about this board. That stands out to be accurate.
That 0 to 2, is that what you're? I'm not
Yes,
following you.
yes, this is a 0 to 2.
Okay.
Yeah. So, so here's where we're going to go next. What I'd like you to do is you're going to each work in partnerships, and each of you will have one area of partnership, and Steve is going to join Shirley. And so what I'd like you to do is access this link, which was the second link in your email. And notice that there's 2 tabs at the bottom. You're going to go to the rightmost tab that says Board Areas. And in there, what I'd like you to do is talk about for about the next 8-ish minutes with your partner about what things, what information, practices, tools, documents, like what things would help you feel more confident as a board in that area? And you can refer to kind of the subcategories that that area had. And also in this part in D, are there individual commitments that you can make? So you all function as a large board, but individually you are board members. And so there are things that you could do individually, maybe to improve in this area or highlight this area, while there are things that we can engage in and spend time in as a board to better understand these areas. So that said, I'm going to have Marcus and Cameron, if you want to work in this area of budget and financial accountability, this first place. And you'll just enter in any information so you can figure out one person who gets to be a typist. Amy and Ross, I'll have you work together on accountability. And Shirley and Steve, I'll have you work on using data for continuous improvement. Okay? So we'll take about 10 minutes. This is just, I don't know if how savvy you all are in these Google Sheet spaces, but to go like enter to the next line below, you do Command Enter. Yeah, as opposed to just, if you hit return, it goes to the actual next box. All right, if you haven't moved on to the second box of individual commitments that you might explore, please do that. All right, in the next minute, make sure that you have whatever in your boxes that pertain to your area. Just make sure this is like last warning to have the things that you need in those boxes. All right, so let's come back together. And we are going to embrace and work from the norm of accepting and expecting non-closure for our time together today. The idea that we will get through all of these and have a game plan for all of them that's just not going to happen. But I think this allows us to have a little bit of sort of honest reflection of where we are and to recognize areas in which we can grow. So for those top 4 areas that y'all engaged in, related to thinking about what tools could we provide, what experiences could we provide, what practices would we be doing if these were strongly in place? We want to be able to surface those and then be able to work on them as we move forward into the coming years. So with that, I think I'll just come around the table here and ask that each group sort of briefly share what's on your mind, what feels most pertinent to find success in this area. So I'll start here with Marcus and Cameron. Why don't you start with budgeting and financial accountability?
I think the most critical piece I think we were talking about is like understanding when we get the hard copy of the budget before the meetings and allow us to be able to formulate questions that is a little bit more meaningful to be able to have better conversations with that. I think that'd be critical. Other things that monthly updates on finances or recap, more communication with the CFO to understand our current needs in terms of finances. So that was the thing that we looked at in terms of practices and tools. In terms of individual commitment, we said, continue to read available data with questions before meetings to make sure that we're not just a student what goes on, but at least have a better understanding so we can have better conversations to make decisions. All right, so that's what we're saying. Do you want us to go to our next one, or you just want to go to accountability? You
Now
got
let's bounce
accountability,
over
correct?
to accountability with Amy and Ross.
Yeah, so, ultimately, we just came back to, we have to have measurable board ends because this is where everything within the system starts. And as I was telling Ross, historically, these, I think were mostly, they maybe were revised at some point, but I think these were mostly written from the board before I was on the board, and I'm the longest serving board member here. So these are long-standing board ends that have not been reviewed or revised, nor are they measurable. So therefore, are we really doing our job as board members under the Carver model if we don't have anything that we can measure? And acknowledging that anything we make obviously has to align with the strategic plan from our superintendent, which I know is being worked on. So I'm hoping that we can have a collaborative process once your strategic plan is done, so that as a board, we can look at our board ends and try to align these things so that we can, work on measuring the system and holding it accountable. And Ross and I were also talking about then the importance of having board members self-evaluations and evaluations in general. And he said he had some great tools that he could probably bring to us. And I think that's a much easier thing to start doing than rewriting the board ends. That's obviously a much larger project. And given that we have elections in May, I want to make sure that the work is done well, it's not rushed, and that everything is aligned with strategic ends and that the whole board is on board with that.
May I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Amy you keep using measurable. I would argue that these are measurable, but what you want are targets. You want
we
the
want
actual
goals because this
data.
just says ELA growth rates, right? So is growth of a % a year, if there's a backlog, the % of students designated as English learners on language, what percentage, right? Because I don't think these are measurable, because measurable means that you can assess change and over time. So to me, I don't know that these are measurable the way that when you look at data and using data, we can't use data to really measure these.
I just want to make that point really clear, because in some terms, these are measurable. They are measurable, but we don't have any targets. We don't know how much or when or how many, right? Okay, I just wanted to clarify that.
And on that note, are board ends the place for including those benchmarks or targets? That's something to
If
consider.
you read the Carver model, it says your board ends need to be measurable and that is the obsessive goal of the board.
But if they are measurable, you're looking for further details for them to demonstrate.
I would
what kind of
argue
measures.
that these aren't measurable because there's no mastery of English language. Okay, well, if only 33% of our kids are testing proficient, then we're not mastering anything. So how are we demonstrating mastery?
Okay. I was going to ask one other question, a little different than this, but something you mentioned about self-evaluation. Did we do some sort of evaluation, maybe, was it the fall of 2023, perhaps? And was that going to be an annual event?
We did use this instrument, or the one from OSBA, just to look at it and talk about it a little bit, but we didn't really go in and do a survey and quantify.
Didn't we do one for us individually, though? That Melissa ran us through, that we had to individually, is that the one you're talking about? or
I
are you
think
talking
so.
about- Okay.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
so.
So I want to put in the room one of the conversations we had August, I think it was. We brought a lot, like 2 full pages of measurable data that were indicators for each of the things. And if you recall, we talked about that a lot, that it was, first of all, it's too much. Secondly, if it were using, for example, if we're using SBAC data that is not required by anybody to be taken, that allows opt-outs, that, that has an argued, and this is true for the Park assessment, which both assessments, SBAC and Park, are the ones that were built, it's been about 12 years ago, I think, those are the two competitors that they set arbitrary success rates for what equated to a on grade level measurement that impacting those test scores and using those as measures were one of many things that we used as an indicator of success. And what I recall vividly, especially I remember Shirley's comment was, there's a lot of things measured here. There's a lot of materials. And one of the things that I would like us to consider, and then I'll stop talking, but I think that even some of what we just talked about in our group, in our small group about using data for continuous improvement model was narrowing scope of what data needs to be the focal point and how do we use the data to then inform. And we just had a great conversation about the fact that each school is taking on their youth truth data and then is expected to use the youth truth feedback that they get in building of their school plans for what they're going to be attending to in the following year. And I think that's part of the dialogue. If we want to get really clear, it goes back to if everything is important, nothing's important. So let's make some choices as we kind of step into this. If we want data to drive what strategic initiatives we're focusing on and be the measures of success of those initiatives, then let's start getting tighter with some of those so we're not trying to impact every single thing. And that means making some decisions that could be challenging for what lives in the go bucket and what gets pulled out of the go bucket. And so we have to, and that could be hard because we can't measure it all. So what do we want to really focus on? And I say that because right now, there's a lot of talk at the governor's level about accountability. Same exact conversation is happening at the state level where they're saying we think they've got it narrowed down to about 5 things that the state's going to focus on in a similar fashion. I would argue, I would say that I don't want to compete with the state's measures, but I would say that SBAC as a tool is a one-shot in time thing that happens in April, May, and may or may not get a kid's best effort and may or might not even be happening especially at the middle school level and the high school level. So coming to some agreement might be part of our dialogue as we move into kind of next iteration on what are those things that are going to be important to us.
So what I'm hearing is levels to it. Yes, we know this stuff is measurable. I understand what you're saying, Amy, too, and I understand what you're saying. It's just the terms between benchmark, target, measurable. Right? So it's basically, is it layers to it? It's like, okay, great. We know we're trying to measure certain things, but at the same time, what are those initial targets so we know how to move on? Okay, we didn't hit it this month. Okay, what are we targeting for next month? And then let's look at those things. And I think what Amy's saying over the years is that we just want to see, okay, if the mark was 95 and we're at 90, how close are we to 95, right? How do we see that? And how do we see that within our board ends to make sure these are things that we are protecting and people, especially lay people who don't look at this stuff all the time like we do, can look at it and go, I understand where the district's going. So I totally get it.
And I would just add, like some of them are lagging indicators, right? Like graduation rates, right? Like we just got our rates for the 23-24 school year. And so when we talk about those.
Actually, they're released this Friday.
Oh, well, we saw them, I should say it that way. So I apologize for that. But that's, here we are, 3/5 into the 25-26 year. And so some of them we can get in real time. Like we get pretty good feedback on attendance. We get pretty good feedback on student participation and how kids are doing on 9th grade on track. But graduation rates are always a lagging indicator. And so how we balance that, and we talk in real time at the administrative level, are the assessment strategies that we're currently using the best indicator of measurement of student learning right now? And if SBAC is the tool, is that a fair and reasonable set of conditions? And I'll leave it at that.
I think one layer that I'd like to just bring into this conversation around data and accountability is that many, to Steve's point of the lagging indicators, many of the tools that we have are kind of a one-time like one time in a year. And we want to balance that also with knowing that we have one of the shortest school years in the nation, and we have some of the shortest amount of time in instruction. We don't want our students to spend a big chunk of their time in assessment. We want them to spend their time in instruction. And so I would argue that all of those things that we have written down are absolutely measurable, and we have targets where they are currently. Now, my question that I would say is probably, I don't know, what I would say is the big important elephant in the room is that the thing we care about? Is that the measure that really is what we want to spend our money on, what we want our students to spend their time in? And will it give us enough information to move instruction forward? And so I think those are our next step conversations as a board to engage in, to say, where are we going? It's not just, is there a number that we can point to? It's not just, is it measurable? It is it measurable and meaningful? And there's a cost-benefit analysis that allows us to feel confident that that's what we want to spend our time and our students' time on.
And are you working to learn how much students are learning? You know, are you measuring learning, I guess? You know, grades used to be said to tell you how much you learn, and they don't. And neither does taking tests, right? So how do you know, in colleges now, we have to all do outcomes-based learning. And we have outcomes, and then we have to show how many students are learning and can demonstrate those outcomes. And I don't know how much that's filtered down into K-12.
Oh, boy.
I would say, so the second piece within our strong academic core on this page, this outlines, oh, sorry, upside down. It outlines our work on that, the standards-based grading and standards-based instruction, rather. And that's really where we know that we have had and graduated a number of students for whom their experience is that they go to college and find themselves in remedial college courses, that's not a match with what their experience was. And that's because their grade maybe wasn't in reflection of their learning. And so we're trying to definitely, that is the work of our teams right now, is getting closer and closer so that students feel like that represents me and my understanding and my work. And teachers are able to say, that represents the engagement and the connection and the learning of that student.
And I guess that's what we should be focusing on, having measures in here for the board ends. So.
Yeah, because to be clear, I don't think a percentage on a test is necessarily a good, accurate measure of anything, right? But like our Youth Truth Data survey, survey data last year, when we were, I think, 22nd percentile for rigor at the middle school level, that's absolutely a reflection on us. That is the type of thing we can put in here. Rigor as referenced by our students who are experiencing the system, right? Because to me, that data point was a failure. And I don't want to see that replicated year after year.
All right, so I'm going to swing back around to Marcus and Cameron. They were able to dig into a second one.
We didn't do ours.
Oh, you didn't? Okay, well, welcome to the table. Way to
Remember, I
come to
wanna
the game.
talk. If you look at the next set, you will see what we were talking about, which is exactly what we're all talking about. I requested graduation data. I want to see it disaggregated every which way but up. I want to know what courses kids took and whether or not they were successful in those courses and which programs produced the best learning. And, CTE, AP or IB, in those specific programs, we know who those kids are. So I want to see that disaggregated data just broken down all the way. Then we expanded. And the word that I think I liked, Amy, is metrics. Agreed upon metrics that the board and administration agree do represent measures of success. 100% is wonderful, it's a goal, but how many things are we ever gonna get to 100%, you know? And the strategic initiatives need to be linked directly to those accountability measures, so it's gotta fit. So we got not only to narrow them down, but to say, we're gonna use this data to say what we do with 8th grade math, 7th grade math, whatever. And then back to Youth Truth. I know that the expectation is that that data goes back to the schools. We've asked to see that data school by school, and we have not cleared that hurdle yet. But we do have a guarantee that the buildings are going back through their areas and that those areas are helping them target their school plan for the next year. I think we need to see a report on that. I think we need to see what the Youth Truth data said, what are you gonna do about it, and what were the results? And just make that really clear. So, and we've got a little bit of a commitment. Those action plans for the school, or the school plan, needs to be sure that there's action plans for those strategies. And one of the things, I am a data geek. I didn't used to be. I'm a language arts teacher, you know, but every quarter, I had to report on 21 schools in Hawaii to the State Department of Ed. Now, I could, you know, I had tons of numbers. I had numbers for everything. But I knew that in a big room with about 30 people, there was no point in going over those numbers. So what I did was I asked myself and some other people, what would most show you the results in a visual way? So I started making data charts and circle charts and every kind of chart you can do on the computer almost. And there are some visual instruments that really can represent that data without trying to go through a whole bunch of numbers. So I think we ought to investigate that a little bit more and say, you know, I really want to see, I want to see a graph, or I want to see a circle that just gives me the percentages of this, or I want specific data on each program, so I'm going to do a bar graph, that kind of thing. So that's where we ended up.
All right, Marcus and Cameron, round us out.
All right, and for the innovation and creativity thing, we said continue to build and maintain relationships with local community organizations, ensure it's relationships that are impactful, increase focus on meeting agendas that are proactively identifying strategic issues that we have with those measures. In terms of things we can do individually, continue to relay information to superintendent about the organizations that are doing work to help us move the needle, and so we continue to stay engaged with them. So, yeah.
All right,
Anyone
thank
add
you.
anything? I'm sorry. No. Okay.
Okay, so in service of that, you know, expecting non-closure today, we are going to do a short closure. And really what I'd want you to think about as we leave today is, what do you feel like is one step forward? So I want you to just have that when you have your idea, put one finger up. So what is one step forward? We talked about 10,000 things. We can't do 10,000 things. What is one step forward that feels meaningful walking out of today?
I'll just speak first here. For me, maintaining this expectation, very much connected to some of Shirley's requests. And so for me, that expectation that we get to dig deeper into the Youth Truth results, and we are privy to that, and it is a top priority for our board meetings.
Thank you.
Yeah, agree with Cameron. When, as a board, we want data to make a decision, I want to make sure we have access to the data as long as we are able to have access to the data. You know, there have been times when I feel like we've asked for data and we have not been given it, and I don't see a reason why we wouldn't be given the data. So I want to make sure we have access to all the information we need as a board.
I'd like to see us restructure to some degree our work sessions, and that our work sessions come right around those number one things. And we talk about that one thing that we're going to focus on that month. And what do we need? What information do we need? Do we need somebody to help us understand it? Or do we just need the data? Or do we need some think about questions around that topic or that strategy?
Well, I think, just looking at the individual commitments section, and I think that's important to be able to come up with strategies and goals and then have each of us commit to do something. And because I like to jump in and just do work, in between meetings. So that's when you get things done and then you can bring back results. So I'm willing to do that. And I think having those commitments helps really get us move forward.
I say the thing really from here today is that the willingness for us to want to do the work, because a lot of people may not want to do the work. We're willing to do it. And I think that's the one thing leaving here from today, that we're committed to it collectively to make that happen. That's the one thing with me. I can tell that we have members here who are dedicated to making sure the work is done, and at the same time doing what's best for our stakeholders and and our constituents within the community. That's the one thing I think we can move still going forward. I know we are. So.
All right, thank you all for spending some time engaging in reflection on both your participation and also where our board is. I would welcome feedback about this process as you go into board leadership in the next few weeks. Please let me know, did this facilitation work for you? Is this something you want to continue? Is that something that you want to change? It's all on the table. I have no hard feelings. I won't be hurt about it. But also know that you have access to this and you can dive in and start to put in some ideas in here. And this can be a document from which we work as we move forward into the months and years to come, if that is something that the board still finds valuable. Okay, so with that, I'll turn it back to our chair.
Thank you, Dr. Berg. Appreciate it very much. And thank you for commitment to putting us through this exercise today. Thank you so much for putting the hard work in. We know it takes a lot of time, so we want to make sure that we appreciate you for doing that. Now we're going to be moving to the floor for board directors' comments. And I'm going to go from my left and around. Director Fisher.
I just want to say thank you, Dr. Burke, and your team for pulling this together. I think this got us thinking. It is hard for our brains to work in the evening, I think, sometimes on new material or revisiting things that need some processing. I also wanted to throw out to the board something that I'm really interested in bringing to the district, or that the district pursues, and that is an assembly that can be brought to secondary schools, and it's called Hang Up and Drive. And there's funding through ODOT, so it'd be completely free. And I'd really love to see the district make that happen. And we know from lots of different experiences that we've encountered over the last many years of teens who need reminders. And I think because the e-bikes got a lot of attention, I think our drivers should get some attention too with regard to accident prevention. And so I hope our board can help advocate for that.
Thanks. I think this was a really good process. Again, we'd seen some of this work, but we hadn't really, been allowed to, not allowed, we haven't been processing it to dive into it as deeply as we did today. So thank you, Lisa.
Yes, thank you, Lisa. I enjoyed the process, and having it being an engagement thing. I mean, I thought when I looked at my watch, I thought, wow, I can't believe it's already 7 o'clock. So for the time to go by fast, that's pretty amazing. So thank you. No, that's great. I'm just glad to be here in person and working with you all, and I look forward to getting to know you better. And I'm having fun with this. So thank you for including me.
Thank you, Lisa. No comment beyond that.
No worries. Thanks again, Lisa. My comments are this. I want to thank Kenzie's team for what's coming up next month, because next month is Black History Month. You know, it's dear and dear to my heart. And I want to thank all the different schools that invited me to be able to come out and be a part of the Martin Luther King celebrations, as well as some of the speeches I'm gonna have to do during Black History Month. I want to thank Kenzie's teams because she has the door decoration competition for Black History Month coming for the elementary, middle, and high schools. I'm looking forward to many of the schools, you know, getting involved in this, because I know we're going to be judging it, and also we're going to be announcing the winners at the dinner celebration at COCC on February 25th. So I just can't wait for that to happen. I just can't wait for the community to find some joy behind the many contributions and many innovations that Black Americans have contributed to this country and to this world. So I'm looking forward to that. So I want to thank Kenzie and your team for getting that word out. And also schools, I know I can't tell you what to do, but I can't wait to see some of the doors, because I know students get really excited about being involved in these type things. All right. So with that being said, if there's no other comments, our next meeting is going to be February 11th. I believe that's correct, is our next meeting. And this meeting is adjourned.
Just a reminder that both Lisa and I will be virtual